Dread not the limits of what is believed possible. Exceed them instead. Hi, I'm Rick, and this is your seat at the table, and we are going to take a bit of a dive into a awesome Battletech fan project led by Devin Ramsey and coordinated by him with a lot of love and work and effort. We all have had projects. We've all had our campaigns and our notes and our game intentions, and many of us have dreamt of writing a book or writing game supplement material or perhaps designing new mech designs and submitting them to the various companies that produce the favorite games that we love in hopes that maybe seeing something of our creation, our willingness to share with our fellow game enthusiasts that love and enthusiasm. And this is perhaps one of the best, if not the best, I personally have ever seen that has not actually been a produced product by some company. And so this saying, dread not the limits of what is believed possible, exceed them instead. Indeed, that is probably the epitaph or the sounding stone for Mr. Ramsey and his associates, and the awesome work that they put into this project, Operation Lancaster. Operation Lancaster. Jesus. Dreadnought Interstellar Industries. That's just kind of, there's so much material here, it's just not possible for me to do it justice in a video. And I actually had about 10 pages worth of notes, and I rewrote those notes several times, and then I just kind of chucked them off to the side because I don't think, they still don't cover everything that I wanted to cover. And the person who created this, Mr. Ramsey, definitely did his homework. He did his due diligence. He obviously has loads of material, so he understands the format of the Battletech production, of majority of the source books, majority of the game adventure supplements, of the technical readouts, all of that stuff, and he applied that knowledge to his creation of his construct. And I know firsthand, I've known firsthand, and you've listened to my channel long enough, you've listened to me, sooner or later I make a ramble about the game I created and the literal years worth of work this went into this, and the rewrites and the rewrites and the rewrites and the expansions. I'm just saying, so I know firsthand exactly just how much effort that it takes. I also know firsthand just how important it is to have associates, friends who will support your endeavor, even help you and assist you in ways. My game not traveled, this would-be Interstellar Frontiers, wouldn't be what it is now had it not been for a couple friends of mine who were really eager to play the game, to ask me questions, to challenge me, to contribute in their own ways through things that they wanted to see for themselves. And it's just a matter of work. So when we look at the front part of it, so he has a section where it says special thanks, and he's thanking all these people: Donald Butler and Zach Schaefer, Michael Brubb, Michael Sitza, Jason Spikeman, Matt Plog, Adam Blackwell, and Matt Mata, to Brian and Noel Crosby, to Megan Data Nerd, Kat Raster, and Otis Thunderhead, or Chris Thunderhead, to Tim Critical Rocket and Paul the Bro, to Tex of the Black Pants Legion, to Stephen Cross and Daniel Treble, to Gus and Ty Ritter, to my brothers Jan and Chris, to Josser Brushel. Just the sheer amount of effort and time and assistance and inspiration that he was given to create this thing. And so we'll have this little note here from the author to the reader. While the vast majority of this project is Devin Ramsey's work, he's most certainly not alone. Notes have been left to indicate credit to the individuals that helped by contributing significant ideas and or literature to this project. A note stating that an article or selection of an article was created and written by someone means that it was used as originally written, usually with minor or grammar edits and or additions. Meanwhile, the note stating that the article or section of an article was originally created by someone means that at the least the majority of the ideas presented in the indicated text originated from that individual or individuals mentioned, that these sections were mostly or were entirely rewritten, often with additions and rewritten altogether by Devin Ramsey. Last but not at all least, many of all the original and non-canon mechanical designs in this project have miniatures available from the independent artists who created them. Notes giving appropriate credit to the have been added to whenever applicable, and links to the artists have been provided whenever applicable. And that is something that really sets this project apart and makes it snap. The artwork. That is one of the biggest stumbling blocks I have with my own game system. I simply am not artistic enough to do the sheer amount of just game related or project related artwork that my 3 books really require to make them snap and stand out. I simply don't have that kind of resources, and I do not have financially the resources to purchase these things or commission them. No matter well, it only costs you $50-$60. Sure, but if you need 100 video or 100 images and pictures, and at the minimum they're $50 a piece, that's $5,000, dude. I don't have $5,000. If I had $5,000, I would have another vehicle. I would replace my vehicle or fix the front end that's making weird noises. $5,000, I would have my furnace paid off, and I would then not have to come up with $180 a month payment for that furnace that I didn't have to do 3 months ago, because everything costs money. It just is what it is. But he was able to find people that were gracious enough to assist him or to help him, even by just lending him their time and expertise when it comes to things like the artwork. That is a massive, huge thing. Really makes the project snap out, and what made it very professional. All you got to do is just look at it. I mean, you can't go without looking at the artwork and go, well, because you can have a lot of good stuff. You can have a lot of mechanics and rules that are very solid. You can have great, quote, fluff, because that's what the stories are. The stories just embody the whole thing. It brings the mechanics, the artwork, and the base game concepts to life. That is how the stories and the backstories and the creation material that goes with things, the explanations for things, in my understanding of how that works. That's how that stuff's applied. So having it all and bringing it all together, and obviously this is a work of some time. We're talking years, a couple years worth of work here. I would be shocked if it was not at least a year plus. I mean, a lot of heavy work. I mean, I spent an insane amount of time working on my game system. I just, at that time, had an insane amount of time on my hands to do that sort of thing. So, it was that or go mad. In a way, writing is a form of madness. Most authors will tell you that they struggled with their works, and their works struggled with them. So, we'll move on to the next thing. The whole operation, the whole game premise, or supplement premise, works around this corporation called Dreadnaught Interstellar Industries. Now, I've said this many, many times before. When we look at Battletech from a player's perspective, whether you're the tabletop war gamer or the role-playing game gamer, or in between, whatever, even the video game gamer, within the Battletech sandbox, there are so many factions, so many possibilities for operating and play and justifying your corner of it without ever scratching the surface of what the sheer amount that's available, not to mention bumping heads with somebody else. So that said, one of the most common, underutilized, in my opinion, factions within the Battletech setting are the major corporations. Most of you have heard of Hesperus and Defiance Industries. Defiance Industries are the backbone of the Irian Commonwealth's manufacturing for war material, specifically battle mechs, and it is the behemoth in their industrial industry complex. But they are not the only one. You can look at Irian from the Free Worlds League, and this is where my notes would have come in, because I had about a half dozen listed. These major corporations. We've got Uncle Chanley's operations there in the Draconis Combine, for example. And they play massive behind-the-scene roles that allow the primary factions. You want to play in or for the Irian Commonwealth, Defiance Industries is contributing to you in some manner. If you want to be an opponent of the Lyran Commonwealth. Defiance Industries is going to be the industrial muscle behind your foe. And the fact of that matter is that these industries are not just factories and number crunchers and industrialists sitting on wads of cash. The fact is most of them have their own mercenary units employed by them or supported by them. Some of them, in case of the major ones, all have their own, quote, defense forces, which are quite robust, and have actually taken some moved into the forefront in a couple novels and eras because of just how impactful they have been and how the game runs behind the scenes. That said, there are hundreds more of these massive conglomerates across the inner sphere that don't get any sign any time in the sun. They don't get any kind of recognition other than the rare blurb here and there and who manufactured something. So there's a great, and so Mr. Ramsey here figured that out. This would be a great starting point and a great place to work. It's a faction that has importance within a couple larger factions, but it's a faction unto itself. So it is an entity unto itself, often left to its own devices because of the nature of the system of that runs and rules the inner sphere. And with that, it's not enough to just say, okay, here's my company, and this company's going to produce these mechs, and we're going to build a defense force around it, and then we're going to use them progressively. It's more deeper than that. So Devlin went on to create the backstory for Dreadnought Interstellar, and how it evolved into the current inclination as of this the publishing of this game, and how it's got its small start and it not quite humble beginnings, and how it expanded and how it grew through the eons, and through the process connected it to key elements and key periods and eras of the Battletech universe history, going back to pre-Starflight. Very briefly begins in that location and it starts going forward. So, the year 2045, not too many more, 20 odd years in our future would be when this company can start its history. And that's not even the exact timeline, I think. Weapon achieves astonishing record-breaking kill shot at 6,732 meters in 2044. So we start seeing this company starting to get its groundwork in, and it goes through all the way through. I mean, it really does. And I'm stumbling here. The founding and early years, the Star League era and Amorous Civil War, the Third Succession War. Fourth Succession War, War 39, the Clan Invasion, Federated Commonwealth Civil War, Word of Lake Jihad. I mean, I can spend an entire video just talking about the backstory of the history, the Jihad aftermath. We got once again the founding and early years. Now, Dreadnought Defense Course, their motto: "We hold." So, the Clan Invasion, Operation Bulldog, and I liked how it was worked in. We could justify this corporation regaining lost technology by participating, by sending elements with Operation Bulldog to the Clan homeworlds to smash the Smoke Jaguars, in the process recovering some of their lost data that had been taken with the Star League when it left on its exodus. And that's just a great segue into justifying how the company produces certain things and has access to certain things, so on and so forth. Like I said, we could spend a couple hours just going over this, and then we bring in things like the various elements within the defenses and offensive forces for Dreadnought that was used in this combat that basically revolves around the Dreadnought Interstellar Industries forces defending and then going after a very nasty element of the Word of Blake during the Jihad and era. So we bring in Blackwood Templars mercenaries, their founding, their setup, the Ronin Free Company's mercenaries, their founding, their setup, so on and so on. Then we get into the World of Bricks Protectorate, the 102nd Provisional Division Divinity Shield. This is the opposing force, the Op-4, and it's well developed and well set up. Then we got ourselves a great map. I do love my maps. Maps really, like pictures, really bring home what, where, why, and how without having to resort to 6 pages of explanations. Awesome artwork. I mean, seriously, this stuff. I wish I could have printed this in color, because the PDF's almost 550 pages. So in reality, you know, this I had to split it in two because my binder just simply would not be able to print all. Now I got 225 pages in the first book alone. So the artwork is expansive, and this is how I intended mine to go too, because once again, when I look at my game stuff, and if we go in, and I left spots where I wanted artwork to go, because artwork is what makes a game system really stand out. So you can see I purposely left spots for artwork to go and to fill pages out. It's the same reason why my equipment guide looks pretty thin. That's because in reality there should be numerous war knights in here, numerous corp mecha and aerospace fighters and tank pictures to show, you know, give a bigger picture of what we're dealing, or what's available to the player, and to give them inspiration, because that's what pictures do. They inspire us. They give us fuel and food for the theater of the mind. There's this small underlying movement that's going on today. That's just actually a more defined portion of a normal movement that's been all through role-playing for as long as it's been around. The idea is that you take on the role of the characters. You are the mech warrior of your machine, and you interact with the environment, the tabletop, the story, the game, the mechanics, the dice rolls, and as much as possible in the mind, and then you present that to the others at the table that you're sharing. So you don't talk in the third person. You don't ask mechanics and, well, how can I do this, or should I do that, or should we do this, unless you're actually in character doing that. I mean, ideally. So visually, having visual aids such as maps and artwork go a long way to fueling that immersion, to the buy-in into the game system and the environment that you're participating in. I mean, it's just something you have to go through and do. So we talk about their chief planet, Akala 3, how it was defended, how it was attacked, the results from it. I mean, like I said, there's just so effing much. Waycross 2, or Theros, another key world for Dreadnought Industries. I mean, we just go through and we talk about the actual Operation Lancaster, the assault, the defense of the planet, and I missed out on that whole era of the Jihad and the Word of Blake. I really did. I'm still playing catch up on that. I'm reading what I can find, what material I get my hands on, and studying up a little bit as much as I can on it, because I want to fill in the missing blanks, because so much went down and so much changed and so much impact happened out of that. What happened between when the Word of Blake went rogue, or went insane, and didn't, or showed their true colors, however you want to look at it. I mean, the elements of this stuff is just crazy. So this is the whole section. It took me a while to read through this, because once again, I have to read things. Generally, I'm reading at work, so I go to a customer, and 2/3 of my jobs revolve around the truck pumping stuff out of a hole in the ground. So I go to the customer, and then I pull the manhole open, I throw the hose down into the grease pit, turn on the pump, get back in the truck. And then I get out every 20 minutes or so to check and see how things are going, do the progress. So I'm reading, while I'm sitting in there, I'm either reading or I'm reviewing stuff on YouTube or watching YouTube videos, depending on if it's 3 in the morning and I'm tired as F, I'm not going to do much reading. But I do, so I'm reading these things a couple pages at a time, and then I set them down, I go do something, I come back. So the retention factor is not as good as I'd like it to be, not like in the old days when I could just sit down and spend 6 hours or 8 hours of studying something. And there's, like I said, I definitely am going to back and revisit this thing when I got more leisure to do so, and section by section, because there's so much stuff here that's entertaining and informing and inspiring, because this is really an awesome blueprint for anybody who wants to create their own version of a mercenary company or corporate defense force or local nobles, whatever. Because I've said that over and over again. I've ran a number of campaigns in my early days for Battletech and for especially for MechWarrior that wasn't, we're members of House Davion. Well, no, you're members of House Smith, and House Smith is basically a small fiefdom, a small barony that's one planet in the backwater of the Federated Suns, and it's so far away from any of the major players that your defense force or your home guard and your military unit is second tier as far as the AFFS is concerned. They might borrow you on occasion if some situation really warrants them, or they're in a life or death situation. The whole house is in a fight for its life. But for the most part, you're left to your own devices, which is patrolling and protecting your lord's property and control, and projecting as power projection for your nobles. So I mean, and that's such a vast option of play that can be done with the game. It's why mercenary commands are so popular, because the mercenary commands are self-contained fiefdoms of their own, and then they hire out their services to whomever, and then so that allows them to kind of move around and to play for different factions at different times, or to focus and deep dive and focus on one specific freaking faction that you really like to play, and it gives you a lot more mobility and options than playing a house unit might. It's a matter of apples and oranges of what your taste is. So, once again, Mr. Ramsey goes into great detail on not just the corporate operations and history, but start looking into products and its product lines. And like a lot of major corporations, they're very diversified. So Dreadnought Interstellar Industries didn't start out as Interstellar. It started out as this, and then evolved, acquired other industries, acquired other resources, evolved and grew and expanded. So if you look at Defiance Industries is well known for producing a lot of mechs and tanks and parts and materials required by these items. But it's not the only thing they do and the only thing they control. So if you look at Irian, and I'm pronouncing it badly, Industries out of the Free Worlds League, they produce a lot of consumer goods, a lot of commercial grade stuff that we don't see a lot of in Battletech because we're not interested in it. The lion's share of the players don't give a damn about luxury vehicles or hover bikes or things like that unless they're somehow applied to their combat scenario, which is a shame because it's more about the role-playing side, MechWarrior side of the game when you see stuff like this. But the idea is it shows just the amount of resources that's available to the entity that's supporting the campaign. So the fact that Dreadnought Interstellar has so much wide-ranging reach and capacity that it makes sense to have them. And then there's the crossovers, obviously, and Mr. Ramsey and his associates thought of that. So it's not just the civilian application, but some of these vehicles, many of them can actually be utilized and are utilized with military variants thereof. And it doesn't, so we're talking high-speed performance hovercraft, we're talking aerospace fighters, we're talking armored cars, utility trucks, the Foundation utility truck, the Ford of the Inner Sphere. And you can see it's a beefy bastard, without a doubt. It's designed for almost all environmental operations. It's designed to be utilized off-road and on-road, and it leads itself to a military variants, of which, of course, there are included in this supplement. I mean, absolutely. Just then we go into their version of the semi-truck, the heavy hauler. These are some elements of Battletech that are underrepresented in the canon. They're underrepresented. by the corporation, in part because the demand for them is not as high as new mechs. People love their damn big stompy robots, so all this other stuff is just kind of chaff. And if you don't have a lot of combat purposes for it, we're back to that full circle that limits how much resources that CGL, for example, Catalyst is willing or able to put towards that sort of stuff. This is where the player base comes into play, and allows us to bring our ideas and concepts to light, and via the internet we're able to share them and to give them to other people. I will try to refine. I will ask Mr. Ramsey and his associate where the hell they gave me the link to get this. Obviously I have it, and I'll figure out where the hell it is, and I'll post it when I post this video. That way you guys want to get it and download it, by all means do so. And there's so much stuff here. It's just it's crazy. Firefighting vehicles. Then we get into mechs, and like most Battletech material, the mechs are the soul and the heart of the game supplement. So in this, it's not any different here. The sheer amount of mech designs. Some of them are very specifically individuals, and some of them are very case point to this game system, or this game supplement, and Dreadnought Interstellar and Operation Lannisters themselves. So obviously the players who love Battletech, who helped and participated in the collaboration on this, it shines, it shows through. You really can see the depth and the tweaking, and it doesn't. And then of course, like it doesn't stop there either, because now we've got VTOL, helo craft, light attack VTOLs. We got recon buggies, combat patrol vehicles, tanks of various tonnage, weight, and categories. There's tank destroyer, command and control vehicle, a modified, one of the modified. So this is a engineering vehicle for, and of course another command vehicle, which is based on the heavy semi-quote transport was shown earlier. So you can see the evolution, which is quite common in even today. Then we get into some pretty unique vehicles that we don't see as many of them in Battletech's official TROs, which is a shame, because you got to assume that they're a lot more prevalent. It's like artillery pieces, for love of Pete. We have 2 or 3 accepted artillery units for Battletech in its main layout. Damn it, I'm struggling with the term I want to use. So the main thing is I'm trying to get at is it was given that everybody made the argument back in the day that the long tom artillery piece, for example, is the most common long range artillery out there, because this was the standard set by the Star League before the Star League fell, and everybody adopted it, etc., etc. And there's some truth to that, but I also call bullshit on that too. No offense, that's just bullshit, because tubed artillery is some of the simplest mechanical weaponry systems that you can construct, and the fact that every house should have a plethora of them. You should have a half dozen or a dozen different types and age brackets and things like this, and specific use or multi-purpose use, whatever. But the fact is, we don't see a lot of it. So inclusions of things that are designed specifically for roles is awesome. So like here, sledgehammer artillery vehicle. This is the Dreadnought Interstellar Industries artillery unit for to the inner sphere. It just adds to the flavor of the Battletech overall altogether, in my opinion. This also then brings us to some other stuff that Mr. Ramsey and his associates thought to include and came up with, in which I've always felt Battletech grossly underrepresented, and from a lot of perspective, the game screams to have this sort of crap. Now the reason most people don't, I guess it's a mixed bag. It's a matter of opinion, because most people don't want to worry about it. They just want to get in their mechs. They want their mechs to fight, and they don't want to care about how they get fixed, how they get reloaded, how they get replenished, who gives a shit? Well, that's what the dropship's for. Well, that's great, except you know what, those big massive dropships are not something that are easy and cheap to move around. And the fact of the matter is, they're still limited. You put a regiment of mechs and their associated vehicles into the field, you might only have a handful of dropships. So those dropships are going to be hard pressed to refit, repair, and replenish. Just my opinion. So these fellows came up with the Triton repair vehicle, and I wish we could see an entire TRO on support equipment for the military units that function. And I'm just saying, there could be an entire TRO created with 100 damn different support vehicles, expanding addition, including the stuff that they've already put out over the years, but expanding on that stuff because it's logical to say that there are. So here we have basically a mobile replenishment and repair gantry system on tracks, and it folds up, it pulls up, expands out, sets up, does its business, and it's mobile enough to get closed up and move again to help keep ahead of the enemy and things like this. I mean, it was a real treat to see this specifically. Then we get into infantry and pilot gear. If you have had the 3025 TRO, there was a couple sections, and I may, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I was pretty sure it was the 3025 TRO, the first one that came out, that included in the back a few items that weren't mech or tank related, things that the standard infantry laser rifle of the Starlink Defense Force military, for example, and some other supporting stuff. We have seen a few supplements, mostly geared towards mechware, come out over the years for that kind of personal ordnance, because generally speaking, personal ordnance in a Battletech tabletop war game is few and far in between. It's less unless you're fighting an infantry battle, and majority of people don't come to Battletech to play infantry battles. There are plenty of game systems out there that are better suited for it and better set up for it. But the truth is that it's still an item, it's still an element of the entire whole of the sandbox that is Battletech. And so having some additional material in here was also nice to see. I mean, you can see just the amount of artwork and CGI work that went into it, and the writing and elements that go along with it. Something to consider from my personal perspective. In 2000, I went to college. I lost a job that I worked at for a long time because the company shut its doors down because we had a strike. I've told this story before. So I went to the local community, the Des Moines Area Community College, and I went for 5 semesters back to back, and acquired an Associate of Applied Sciences degree in computer-aided design, CAD tech, rendering, and blueprint design. That's what I went to school for. And then I was unable to find a freaking job that I could get fast enough at the time that I needed, that before I got myself into a bind and ended up having to take what I could freaking get, because sometimes you make some bad decisions and you pay for it. So I personally understand just how much work goes into creating rendering and 3D artwork of any sort, and translating that stuff over to wire images. So I can't tell you if this was done on a computer or by hand, because a talented artist can do work with their hands that will rival anything a computer can generate. But I also know that you can take any 3D creation and really ramp it up, i.e. CGI, i.e. the stuff we see in animation and video games and things like this, and movies today, for the point where you can't tell if it's a computer generated or it's fake. Except your rational mind saying, well, that big monster there obviously is not real, because we don't have something that's 90 feet tall and can throw 100-ton tanks around with ease. But you can render those things into a 2D image that looks very artistic, like it was hand drawn. So anyway, the amount of detail and effort that goes into this artwork is astounding and professional grade. If these folks that did the drawings and artwork that are in these pages are not doing this for a living, that's a damn shame. I mean, it's a damn. I understand sometimes things don't work out the way we want to, but it is a damn shame if not. So we've got a whole set of light battle armor and specialty equipment, things like this. We're just expanding on the available stuff that's out there for Battletech, and this is great stuff. I mean, honestly, every bit of it's easily plug and play for any Battletech timeline you want to go. I mean, you may have to justify it a little bit if it's not the era that it should be suited for, but the facts of the matter is that with pretty much everything we have currently, all this stuff would be functional. You could easily plug it in. So we get into, this is a proto-mech. Battlemechs and Omni-mechs, a Dreadnought Battlecorps. So that we get into the rest of that. So that basically ends this particular half, or book one of this great system, and brings us to the second half of it, which is pretty much the same thing. It's just the sheer amount of mechs and variants, and some of these are one-offs, and we don't stop here either, because he's got drop ships, he's got shuttles, they've got warships. We got the aerospace assets of the Dreadnought Battlecorps, tactical satellites. Another element that gets touched on here and there in the canon, that's a term I was trying to come up with a little while ago. Canon material that's produced by both FAST. It was produced by FAST, FanPro, WizKit, and now Catalyst, but it's underrepresented. Satellites is something that would be underrepresented. That the more we have of them, the more we would see them utilized in gameplay, because we make a lot of assumptions, and there's reasons why some of those things work and don't work, and here's great examples of that. Aerospace fighters, dropships. Here's a recovery craft. Once again, just like the track vehicle for supporting and repairing and replenishing your mechs in the field, having salvage vehicles for space operations, it's a given. The fact that they have to exist, and I think we've seen one tug-like drop ship in I'm stumbling over which TRO it is, but I know I've seen it because it's got all the grapplers on the front. I think it's called the Octopus. Excuse me, man. Yeah, dry throat. Anyway, they would exist, and they would exist in numbers. And the fact that these guys thought about it, obviously they've had including this in their gameplay at some point in their operations, and to go to make the extra effort to create them is awesome. So we've got the SCUA recovery craft for, here we have a drop shuttle / drop ship. That's something else that I've said before in earlier videos when it comes to aerospace and FTL technology and items. The FAST has said in its early renditions that we're just giving you the most common examples of this stuff. So they gave us a number of very well-known drop ships and shuttles and jump ships and warships from the early eras. Everybody knows the Union and the Leopard and the Overlord, but for every Overlord there's 12 other that we don't know, and some of them were lost to time, some were phased out, some whatever. The truth is, we're back to that numbers in the game. From the game perspective, from the company perspective, they could produce numerous TROs and have hundreds more drop shuttles and drop ships and jump ships and warships and aerospace fighters than we do have. It's just that the fan base are not overwhelmingly in favor of them. So they're there more for fluff and backstory and look, and for the occasional justification of how we got from there to here, and it's all about the big stompy robots. So we don't have nearly as much stuff. Hi, Mama. Are you coming over here? You trying to get down? Or you're just curious? Yeah? Well, I don't want to touch you because you get mad. Right? You trying to get down? Yeah? Okay, let me pause here for a minute and see if I can come back and get her situated. Well, let's see if this picked up and paused, because we got her down off the table. She's now on the floor under a chair. I didn't know if she wanted to come down and use the bathroom, use the cat box, or get something to eat, or if she was just coming over here to see what I was doing. But she usually smacks at me, and I got clawed by her a couple days ago, and I'm not trying to upset her or cheese her off or any of that stuff. So it is what it is. Like I said, we're back to the drop ships and jump ships, and there's such a variety of things and great, awesome artwork. I mean, honestly, they went to some great lengths to make sure the representation of everything is available to us, and it's just I'm not getting paid by anybody to say any of this stuff. I'm just really impressed by everything that I see here. This is easily equal to anything I can pull off of my shelf that's been produced by 4 different companies over the time, and it's something that would really be. It would be nice to see it get a wider audience, get more exposure, because it's really something that it deserves to be in everybody's Battletech collection, in my opinion, because there's so many things here, so many ideas and great stuff that would fill some niches that are grossly represented, in my opinion, you know, and that blah blah blah. So we're in here back into a whole bunch of very specific mechs and designs that are one-offs and customization for their pilots and for particular roles. Because there's also an element of tie-in from Dreadnought Interstellar Industries. Also has some operation. I won't say. Let me rephrase that. Not operations, but they have conducted some elements within the Solar 7 itself, which makes sense. I mean, if you're going to be a massive production corporation of any kind of machinery, the best way to get your stuff out there and to see and let people see it in action is things like the combat arenas on Solars, for example, and all the publicity and hype that goes along with everything that goes on the game world. So it's just like the major car companies have car shows, and they put their best work out there, and a lot of times it's custom work, it's experimental stuff, it's concept art, if you will, concept vehicles that never actually see production, or they were produced for one specific person for one specific purpose. And this game supplement also ties a little bit of that in. So I thought it was worth having in here, worth bringing up and sharing that. I mean, geez. Obviously, they're taking existing. So, like I said, an existing Marauder 2, but this is a specific machine with a specific name, Blackwood, and the pilot Sigrid Blackwood, Mad 4A Marauder 2 Blackwood, and goes on and gives her history, her bio, and so on and so forth. So I mean, there's just so much material here. It really is hard to do a really solid, in-depth expose on what's going on here. So, all right, and we have a section here for miscellaneous personnel profiles, and we got our TRO. Dreadnought Interstellar Industries weapons equipment production list. So it shows everything that they produce. There was also one in here somewhere that actually shows their defense forces table of organization. And I may have buzzed over it already. It might be in that first book. Then we get into plants and animals on their home world, their operation worlds, and things like this. And specific rules, special equipment rules, and quirks. So some homebrew material for their existing equipment that's not canon, and or their tweak or take on things that are not canon but are still functionable in our game. Yeah, here we go. This is their equipment list. So we're seeing heavy weapons, missiles, electronic specialized equipment, power plants, wheeled tracked hover vehicles, VTOL, small craft, jump ships, warships, pretty much a highlight of everything we've seen. Personnel index, and local fauna on Akala, which once again I think is underrepresented in the Battletech game universe. We see it crops up here and there, the occasional supplement or story or something on reviewing planets. There'll be this, that, but they really don't show the huge variety of, quote, alien exotic life forms that exist in the inner sphere and the periphery, and that every planet is not Earth. Every planet should be unique in some aspect, and if it has life on it, should have some exotic life. And it doesn't have to be so exotic that it's extremely alien, but the fact that they thought about this, and then they worked them into their stories. These things are some pretty impressive stories. That's what I was talking about. We get into the short novelettes in the back, the short stories. Nightmares was something else. I mean, I read through these and I went back and read them again because they're well worth their read. I mean, it gives a lot of flavor and emphasis on what happened in the aftermath of people dealing with the Jihad and the Word of Blake's invasion of their holdings. So here's the prophecy keepsakes. Great work. You can see that, you can tell that that Mr. Ramsey did his homework, that he did his editorial work. And it's one thing to just write a story, but to make it presentable in a format that's normally used by most of us as entertainment usually takes a couple rewrites. You need to be able to understand that your work's not perfect. I know, like I said, once again, I harp about it, I cry about it, I comment quite often about the fact I have written a shitload of crap, and I've yet to publish anything, and that's because I'm my own worst enemy. And it's just, you need to be able to write what you want to write, put your story on the paper, and then go back and trash your story and rewrite it and tweak it and twist it and do all the editorial work that's needed to make it presentable and make sense and flow. And make sure that it doesn't dead end somewhere, that the stories doesn't have tangents that go off on wild goose traces that have no bearing to the overall arc of the story and have no endings to them. Just saying, right? Like I said, awesome artwork, awesome story creation, professional grade stuff, without a question. The making of Operation Lancaster. This was a nice piece of add-on to the back because it gives you a sense of just how much effort and time. This is what I was talking about, 3D rendering. It's how you get started. You start out and it evolves and you keep tweaking it, and you get more detail and you get more efforts on it. And the amount of hours, the hundreds of hours worth of work here, if not thousands of hours of all these different associated people, is just the way it goes. I mean, this is how it is. You see those things in those video games and you think, oh, how great they work, how awesome they look, but you don't really appreciate just how much time and effort went into bringing them to the finished product that everybody sees at the end of the day, and a lot of times you dismiss that because to you, you're just there for the entertainment value of the video game, or you're enjoying the visual pictures that are being put in the source books, but you don't really appreciate the amount of love, effort, time, sweat, and tears that went in to create all those things that might only be a brief moment in your day. Somebody spent weeks, months working on it, and to the exclusion of pretty much everything else in there. That was what they devoted their time to, right? So, just saying. Another reference to Critical Rocket here. Good stuff, bud. Good stuff there, Devin and associated people. I mean, without a doubt, this is something. If you don't have this, you need to download the damn PDF. You won't. It's free. It's easily equal to anything that's been produced by 4 different game companies and all the people associated with them. Just saying. And anyway, this is Rick. Until next time, you guys have a great weekend. Going on, my friends, this is Rick, and hey, if you like the channel, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, tell your buddies, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, tell anybody else that's in the gaming industry or gaming fandom that says, hey, this is a channel worth checking out, right? Till next time, I hope you guys